Under a red sky, a girl runs desperately through a dark and gloomy alley. Behind her, a masked man chases her with a blade and asks her not to run. He keeps following the young woman and tells her to be a good girl. With a wicked look, the criminal moves in to harm the young woman with his sharp blade. However, a mysterious young man suddenly appears and steps in front of the girl to protect her. The blade strikes the young man's chest, and he stumbles backward from the force of the hit. Realizing he was tricked, the assailant becomes furious at the boy's interference. Even though he's hurt, the hero faces the villain without fear and holds the blade firmly. The young man's red liquid starts to drip on the ground, slowly forming a puddle. Then in his mind, a drop of energy hits his head and ripples appear. Suddenly his eyes open, revealing a bright blue iris full of power. Next, the protagonist wakes up in his bed and realizes it was all just a dream. Walking through the house, he sees a news report on TV showing the exact scene from his nightmare. While brushing his teeth, he discovers that the victim was a culprit responsible for more than 10 crimes. Apparently, the criminal's main targets were always young, defenseless women. Changing scenes, we see a building, and someone comments on student graduation trips. Our hero arrives at a hotel thinking it's his last chance to have fun before becoming an adult. Showing a map, he asks for directions to a cafe he saw online called Tamahira. The owner of the place says the cafe has closed, but the young man decides to go anyway as a form of training. As she says goodbye to him, the lady comments that she wishes her son had the same energy. The young man turns to the lady's son, who seems quite strange. His name is Tsunomiya Kaido, and he doesn't seem to be a big fan of bathing. Our hero scolds him, asking about his habits and what he does for a living. Suddenly, a suitcase is thrown out of the window toward the two young men. The object hits Kaito squarely and several pieces of women's undergarments fall to the ground. The boy's mother yells for him to get a job while the young man picks up his things. Carrying his bags, Kaito leaves, and the protagonist watches the scene. Later, we see a picture of him taking a photo with a very strange smile on his face. At another moment, a heavy rain starts to fall, soaking everything around. In the water, we see a battered Kaito trying to get away from our hero, who is chasing him. The young man is forcefully thrown into the water and cries out in pain from the heavy impact. Desperate, he begs for help, but the protagonist holds him by the hair without mercy. Being lifted, the photographer asks who that guy is and tells him to let go immediately. With a cold expression, the hooded young man extends his hand and drops the guy on the ground. He then presses his foot on Kaito's head to keep him from getting up. Looking inside the cafe, the photographer sees a memorial with a girl's picture. Apparently, he had several photos of that young woman and would look at them on his computer. With a creepy smile, he would spy on the girl through her bedroom door. On an online forum, we see several people commenting on files and photos. It seems Kaito is the owner of the chat room and sold access codes to premium members. With a greedy smile, he sees that he earned 600,000 yen from his photos. The photographer feels victorious and invincible after getting so much money. Kneeling on the ground, the photographer hears the hero accuse him of causing the girl's passing. Without hesitation, the protagonist gives the man an injection in the neck. Kaito denies the accusation, but the young man reveals he was hired by the victim's mother. Saying his job is done, the young man backs away as the girl's ghost appears. The girl's spirit appears with a furious look, and lightning strikes around her. She then hands a shiny object to the hero as payment. The young man accepts the payment and holds the object carefully in his hands. With a serious expression, the young man watches the scene unfold in the rain. In the background, we hear the photographer's desperate cries as he pleads for his life. The protagonist seems disturbed by the cries and covers his ears so as not to hear. After everything, the young man turns and leaves the cafe in the heavy rain. Alone on the dark road, he continues his walk without looking back. Looking at the sky, he notices the rain is getting heavier and decides to turn back. Standing at a bus stop, he waits for the transport to arrive with its headlights on. The vehicle stops in front of him, and the young man gets ready to board. Suddenly, a man is thrown out of the bus and bumps into him. The man runs off terrified, shouting that the door opened as he flees. Fighting the man strange, the protagonist enters the empty and mysterious bus. The young man is a little surprised by the bizarre situation inside the vehicle. Walking down the aisle, he notices the bus is completely empty and has no driver. Suddenly, a robotic voice announces that the bus is departing and everyone must be seated. Even with no one at the wheel, the vehicle starts moving down the road by itself. The electronic message keeps repeating, making the atmosphere increasingly tense. The young man finds the warnings very strange and starts to wonder what's going on. Looking at the other passengers, he questions why no one is worried. A strong, bald man advises him to sit down as the voice is instructing. At that moment, a strong blue electric current starts coming from the bus floor. The protagonist is startled to see the electricity and doesn't understand any of it. He then realizes that this is a penalty for not following the instructions. Another person who is also standing starts to receive the electric shocks. Falling to the floor, he understands that it's not a hallucination but a rule. The bald man then explains that he has entered a bus to his doom and will lay down the rules. The big guy grabs him by his clothes and says he must obey everything without complaining. Scared, the young man agrees to do whatever he says as long as he doesn't get hurt. Pretending to cooperate, the young man asks what's happening because he's scared. The man reveals that the bus travels between the surface world and the underworld. The underworld is a different dimension full of spirits and deadly dangers. At each stage, they must battle monsters until one side loses. Apparently, everyone on the bus is running from some sin from the surface world. The young man says he's just a college student, but the bald man doesn't seem to believe him. Other passengers warn him not to trust the man, as not everyone there is a criminal. A couple delinquents mock the young man and bet that he won't make it past the first stage. Our hero listens to their conversation with a very serious look on his face. He thinks that he has only dealt with crooks who escaped the law and deserve to be punished. A scared man yells that another stop has arrived and the monsters are coming. The system announces that the next stop is Moon Lake and for everyone to get ready. Without warning, the bald man lands a heavy punch on another passenger's face. The big guy tells the fallen man to shut up because he will serve as good bait. The tattooed woman grabs another person and says that anyone who doesn't follow the rules becomes bait. With a determined look, the young man realizes he needs to appear useful to survive. The girl threatens him, saying to get off or he'll end up as monster food. Worried and breaking out in a cold sweat, the protagonist slowly approaches the bus door. Looking outside, he is startled to see a shadow with sharp claws on the window. The young man jumps back, shouting that he saw a ghost, while the others watch him. With a wicked smile, the bald man warns that this is just the beginning of the journey. The group disembarks in a dark place and the young woman holds the protagonist's arm. She teases him, asking if he's already scared, and he questions why she's picking on him. Annoyed by the boy's response, the woman attacks him with a knee to the stomach. The young man is struck squarely by the girl's blow and feels the heavy impact. Lying on the ground, he apologizes while the young woman glares at him angrily. She is surprised that he didn't feel the blow and tells him to come with her. The young woman warns that if he stays behind, he will surely be done for. The bald man and his friend plan to use the tied-up man as bait for the monsters. The suspended man is badly hurt and appears to be unconscious at the moment. Desperate, the man begs them to let him go because he doesn't want to perish there. He yells that he has a lot of money and can give them as much as they want in return. The big guy says that money is useless there, while an elderly couple watches everything. Holding a blade, the hero wonders if he should try to save that man. Suddenly, a noise echoes through the warehouse, and everyone goes on high alert. The group's leader shouts that the monsters have arrived, and the elderly couple panics. He quickly throws packets of explosives to everyone so they can defend themselves from the creatures. The young man holds the explosives and doesn't understand why the bald man had so many. Soon, a horde of shadowy monsters with glowing red eyes appears in the area. One of the creatures leaps toward the suspended man to go after the bait. The creature reveals a horrifying female face to the man, who becomes terrified. With a look of hatred, the monster seems to recognize the man and says it was waiting for him. She accuses him of ruining everything and says she will not forgive him for it. The creature's claws get closer to the man's face as he cries out in pain. The man's body hangs limply as a dark liquid drips from it. The creature holds the man's face as a dark energy flows from its hands. With a frightening smile, the phantom shows its sharp teeth and red eyes. Then, part of its face returns to normal, revealing an expression of sadness and pain. In his final moments, the man desperately yells that he wasn't the one who eliminated them. The phantom accuses him of having drained every last drop of their lifeblood. He denies it, saying he only took their money, but the creature is talking about something else. She reveals that he stole her husband's compensation, leading him to a tragic end. To the ghost, that was the same as taking their lifeblood with his own hands. The man screams in agony as the phantom assails him with its sharp claws. With a vengeful look, she says that now she will drain everything from him as revenge. Soon, several other ghosts who were also his victims appear behind her. Seeing the other souls, the man panics, and the creature says he drained them too. The ghost then begins to cry, remembering all the suffering she went through. In a memory, we see the man's car driving at high speed on the road. At the wheel, he ignores the protests of people asking for their money back. With a malicious look, the man seemed determined not to give in to their pleas. Without a second thought, he steps hard on the accelerator to drive toward the crowd. The vehicle heads toward a group of people trying to stop the car with their hands. Several protesters were shouting for justice and compensation in front of the factory. A desperate woman pleads, showing a doctor's note, and says her husband has been burned. She continues to explain that the hospital requires payment, but the man ignores her. The car speeds up, and the woman is thrown to the ground as her papers fly everywhere. Some people run to help her while the driver flees without looking back. We see the woman lying on the street as the car disappears over the horizon without offering help. Standing on the street, she receives a call saying her husband took too much medicine. In shock, the woman can't believe the news and finds out her husband is gone. Devastated, she falls to her knees and wonders why all of this happened. Crying heavily, the woman blames the man for all the tragedy in her life. Unable to bear the pain, she decides to end her own suffering once and for all. Back in the present, the ghosts furiously assail the suspended man. The protagonist hears the story and realizes the man was indeed a sinner. The bald man gets annoyed and yells at the young man, asking what he's waiting for. The group starts throwing the explosives toward the horde of monsters. The delinquent couple warns the young man to be careful of a powerful explosion. The creatures gather around the man, and the leader gives the signal to strike. 3 packs of dynamite fly through the air toward the group of phantoms. A giant explosion occurs, throwing all the passengers far away from the impact. Lying on the ground, the protagonist caused because of the smoke from the explosion. Suddenly, he looks up and sees a surviving monster right in front of him. With a blue glow in his eyes, the protagonist prepares to face the creature. In the blink of an eye, he cuts the monster in half with a quick and precise strike. Kneeling on the ground, he comments that he thought the monster would be much tougher. The bald man is shocked by the scene and asks if he was the one who did that. The delinquent couple doubts that the weak-looking young man is capable of such a feat. To create a diversion, the hero throws himself to the ground and pretends the monster just fell there. He then gets up to look for the elderly couple, but is stopped by the blonde man. The group's leader, however, becomes suspicious and knows an explosion wouldn't do that. The survivors spread out across the destroyed area in search of the two missing people. An hour later, they return to the bus and confirm they didn't find anyone. The bald man gets angry and thinks the couple abandoned the group to survive on their own. He explains that all survivors need to board for the bus to move. If the door is still closed, it means they are alive and have just wandered off. The group realizes they need to find them soon or they might run out of resources. Impatiently, the leader yells for everyone to stop dawdling and start the search. The four of them then set out together to look for the couple in the surrounding area. The big guy climbs a wall to get a better view of the area and look for clues. Suddenly, a strange sound catches the young man's attention, and he turns to look. He hears the noise and warns everyone that the next monsters must be arriving. The group continues the search through a plantation, and the bald man gets irritated with the situation. The hero finds the place too peaceful, but the blonde guy tells him not to let his guard down. Suddenly, they find an elderly man walking with a large, strong ox. The short-haired girl gets annoyed by the man's stare and asks what he wants. The old man tells them that the couple they are looking for showed up there earlier asking for food. The bald man then asks if the couple's last name was Haramoto, and the man confirms it. The group's leader wants to know where they are, and the man says they are still at his house. Apparently, the couple seemed hurt and was attacked by some kind of animal. The protagonist analyzes the situation and notices that the village and its residents seem normal. The group then follows the man along a stone path toward his house. The young man thinks that in such a strange world, normality is the most frightening thing. A local resident stares at the girl, and she threatens him, saying she'll pluck out his eyes. The old man apologizes and says the man is crazy as the guy runs away. He then shows them the way to his house, where the missing couple is waiting for them. The lady greets the group with a smile and says that they've finally been reunited. The blonde guy doesn't think the couple is a threat, and they rejoin the group. The delinquent mocks the old man for running away, but he says he was worried. The host then brings a tray of warm bread to offer the visitors. Seeing the group's suspicion, he assures them the food isn't poisoned. The elderly couple eats calmly and comments on the kindness of the residents. A fat man appears running and shouts excitedly upon seeing the food and guests. The host's son devours the bread, and the father says he isn't very smart. Everyone starts to take some food to try the offered feast. The group eats heartily, and the girl comments that it's good to eat something different. Seeing that the food is safe, the protagonist decides to eat as well without worry. The elderly couple suggests that the group spend the night there to avoid the dangers. They explain that it's safer to leave during the day to avoid wolves and bears. A bear's roar startles everyone, and the blonde guy asks the hero what he thinks. The young man says that if they don't have enough ammunition, it's best to stay the night. In a room, the protagonist sleeps on a bottom bunk while a companion sleeps on top. In the other room, the delinquent couple enjoys the night together in bed. Suddenly, a shadow in the window startles the couple, who scream in fright. The blonde guy runs outside and finds the homeowner's son with a rake. Furious, he accuses the young man of spying on his woman and goes after him. Even while being hit, the man praises the girl's beauty, making the blonde guy even angrier. The father appears and tries to calm the situation, asking them to talk it over. In the living room, the host asks the blonde guy to sit down and resolve the problem. Straight to the point, the old man offers money to buy the young man's girlfriend. The couple is offended by the proposal, and the blonde guy gets angry at the man's audacity. The old man then blackmails him, saying that he is also being hunted for something. Angrily, the blonde guy throws the glass on the floor, and shards scatter everywhere. Full of rage, the blonde guy prepares to go after the old man, but something unexpected happens. A shadowy figure suddenly appears and strikes the young man with a heavy object. The blow hits the blonde guy squarely on the head, and he falls to the ground from the impact. The homeowner's son continues to strike the fallen man while yelling nonstop. In a private conversation, the elderly couple discusses the payment for the girl. Their son then approaches the room where the young woman is sleeping. He enters the room and watches the girl lying in bed with a strange look. The woman is sleeping soundly and doesn't notice the man's presence in the room. With a creepy smile, the young man approaches the bed to do something to her. The girl wakes up with the noise and is terrified to see the man on top of her. The next morning, the host panics when he realizes something is wrong. He desperately yells that the tattooed couple has vanished and that the blonde guy escaped. The bald man doesn't understand and says they wouldn't run off without telling anyone. The group gathers, and the hero finds it strange because he knows the bus wouldn't leave. With a serious look, the young man suspects that something bad happened to the couple. The host feigns concern and says that everyone in the village is looking for them. Suddenly, one of the residents appears running and shouting that the situation is bad. The residents find only some scraps of clothing and blame wild animals. Nearby, the protagonist finds a piece of torn black cloth on the ground. He and the bald man find the couple's clothes and wonder what really happened. The bald man grabs the protagonist, and the young man is confused by his action. Without wasting time, the group's leader asks him to pretend he's looking for clues. Whispering, the bald man warns him about the danger in the village and says it's all a setup. He recognizes the young man's intelligence and realizes the residents are the real danger. The elderly couple cries, and the protagonist realizes they are on the side of the residents. The old woman suggests searching for a few more days, but the bald man wants to go back soon. Faking fear, the young man shouts that he won't go back and that the others can go without him. The leader grabs him and pretends to be angry, while the young man says he'd rather stay in the village. The big guy then throws the young man to the ground and fakes a fight to deceive the others. He steps on the young man's chest and says they were done in for leaving the village alone. The elderly couple helps the young man up, and he says the world outside is dangerous. The residents invite him to a feast and promise to take good care of him from now on. During dinner, the young man pretends to get drunk, and the elderly couple comments on his youth. When midnight arrives, the young man prepares to put his plan into action. Lying in bed, he opens his eyes and gets up, determined to find out the truth. With his eyes glowing in the dark, he prepares to investigate the mysterious village. Outside, he walks with a flashlight in search of clues about the couple. He finds a wooden trapdoor on the ground and approaches it to investigate. Shining a light on the spot, the protagonist realizes something is hidden down there. As he tries to open the trapdoor, he feels a strange energy coming from inside. With a crowbar, the protagonist forces the trapdoor open. He uses all his strength to break the lock and finally manages to open it. When he shines a light inside, he is shocked by what he finds. The missing girl is tied up and gagged in the dark, damp cellar. She gets scared when she sees him, but the young man asks her to be quiet so as not to alert anyone. He then carefully removes the gag from her mouth so she can speak. The young woman tells him that the residents tried to sell her to the owner's crazy son. She is surprised by the young man's strength, and he tells her to be quiet. With an analytical look, he remembers that the clothes they found were men's clothes. He asks where her boyfriend is, and the young woman says she doesn't know. Suddenly, the host appears and asks what is going on there. The hero grabs the girl and pretends to be harming her to deceive the old man. The old man grumbles about the impatience of youth and doesn't seem to suspect anything. He warns him to be careful because the woman has a strong temper. The young man shouts that everything is fine, and the girl realizes the old man was one of them. Whispering, he asks her to cooperate if she wants to escape from that place. The protagonist then pretends to overpower the girl and tells the old man to do what he wants. The host smiles with satisfaction and walks away, leaving the two of them alone in the cellar. The girl apologizes and thanks him for helping her out of that situation. The scene changes to a view of the village under the morning sun. He explains that the only way out is to be taken by the residents at night. With a serious look, the young man says the situation is much more complicated than it seems. The bond between the residents is strong, and they protect each other at all costs against strangers. Any suspicious movement during the day could turn all the residents against them. Being in an unknown place is a major disadvantage for the group of outsiders. He reveals that the others will be picked up by the leader and that her boyfriend is already gone. Desperate, the girl grabs him and asks what happened to her boyfriend. The young man tells her that the residents tried to buy her and took drastic measures. The young woman is shocked to discover the plan of the elderly couple and her boyfriend. She then rips her own clothes to fake an attack and deceive the residents. The protagonist questions her, and she says they need to make it look like a real incident. The girl lies down on the cellar floor and positions herself for the perfect act. The host comments on the young man's audacity, and the protagonist smiles back. Walking through the village, the young man notices he is being watched by one of the residents. He approaches a window with bars and hears someone shouting from inside. A trapped woman shouts that she is not crazy and that her mind is perfectly sane. Two residents appear and start banging on the bars to silence the woman. The woman cowers in fear and yells at them to stop the psychological torment. Tired of being beaten, the woman gives up and says she will obey everything they command. Another resident approaches and asks if he is the new adopted son of the house. The resident questions the young man's silence, and he covers it up with a fake smile. The residents mock him, but the hero contains himself so as not to ruin his plan. With a clenched fist, he feels the urge to finish them all right there. Night falls, and the elderly couple announces that dinner is ready for everyone. The young man kindly offers to bring the food and put his plan into action. He takes the bowl and walks ahead while the elderly couple follows him closely. Discreetly, he puts a strange liquid in the food to poison the residents. The young man then serves dinner and says he will take food to the other two. The elderly couple starts eating the meat without suspecting anything and enjoys the feast. They praise the young man for his attitude and say that now his life will be safe. Suddenly, the elderly couple starts to feel sharp pains in their stomachs and dizziness. The protagonist and the girl run hand in hand to meet the leader at the exit. He reveals that he put the medicine the bald man gave him in the residents' food. The two flee through the dark village while the girl follows him without question. They run as fast as they can to escape before anyone sees them. The owner's son appears and tries to stop their escape with his glowing eyes. The protagonist dodges the man's attack and knocks him down with a quick blow. The noise of the fight wakes up the whole village, and residents start coming out of their houses. The girl panics, but the young man scolds her and tells them to keep going. The man gets up furiously and shouts for the protagonist to give back his wife. The young man charges with a strong blow, but the hero dodges it and knocks him down with ease. With a well-aimed kick, the protagonist throws the man to the ground and continues his escape. He yells for the girl to run while the fallen man watches the scene helplessly. The residents appear with farm tools and surround the two escapees. The young man can't believe that the kind people from before are the same ones now. Running through the forest, the girl trips and falls to the ground, crying out in pain. The residents find her, and she begs the young man not to leave her behind. With their tools in hand, the residents prepare to move in on the fallen girl. Seeing that the young woman has disappeared, they decide to split up to find her faster. Hiding in a dark alley, the fugitive couple waits for the residents to pass. The protagonist wonders if they have left yet, but the girl tells him to wait. Suddenly, a resident appears and surprises the two with a pickaxe in her hand. The woman screams and alerts the others that she found the two hidden fugitives. The hero knocks her out with a quick and precise blow before she can strike. The fallen woman asks if they didn't hear a voice coming from there, and the young man hurries her along. They hear a call for help, and the protagonist recognizes the mysterious voice. Using a hairpin, the young man skillfully picks the lock of the cell. The girl is shocked and wonders how a student can do that. Upon entering the cell, a horrible smell fills the air, and the girl complains. The imprisoned woman says she won't try to escape anymore and cowers in the corner of the cell. The young man asks if she is okay, if she was the one who called for help earlier. The woman then asks if he isn't from that strange village either. Desperate, she introduces herself and asks him to tell her family what happened. The protagonist calms her down and promises that he will help her get out of that situation. Hopeless, the woman asks only for a lighter for one last wish. The young man hands her the lighter, and he and the girl walk away, leaving her alone. With the lighter in her hand, the woman cries and prepares to do what she must. In the forest, the fugitive couple finds the bald man waiting for them. The group's leader draws a weapon and prepares to face the residents. One of the residents finds them and shouts for the others to get the girl. The bald man hands the weapon to the girl and tells the young man to hide. Without hesitation, the young woman fires at the residents to clear a path for their escape. The residents are startled by the shot and retreat in fear of the firearm. Seeing that they are armed, the residents decide not to pursue them anymore. The bald man asks if the plan worked, and the young man confirms the fate of the elderly couple. The girl says her boyfriend deserved it and that he can stay there forever if he wants. Furious, the residents promise to get revenge on the girl and punish her for her audacity. They then notice that the cell door is open and that the prisoner has escaped. Suddenly, a fire starts in one of the houses and the flames spread quickly. The residents become desperate and rush to put out the fire before the village burns down. Surrounded by fire, the residents cry for help as the flames consume everything. One of the men is engulfed by the flames and begs for no one to come near. The imprisoned woman watches everything with a smile of revenge on her face and feels vindicated. The elderly couple who ate the poisoned food writhe in pain on the floor of the house. The woman then stands up and walks toward the fire for a final act. Inside, the elderly couple calls for help, but the flames block the exit. The fire spreads rapidly through the house, destroying everything in its path. The ceiling collapses on the elderly couple, who scream in despair with nowhere to run. The souls of the elderly couple leave their bodies and float out of the burning house. The spirits then fly toward the bus, where the survivors are waiting. The souls enter the bus, and the protagonist watches the scene from the vehicle's window. On a screen in the bus, they see that the elderly couple did not survive the fire. In a recording, they discover that the elderly couple trafficked people and sold women. The hero reflects and realizes that humans can be much more frightening than ghosts. The screen shows the scores of the 3 survivors, with the bald man leading with 60 points. The young man explains that there are hidden points that are added to the public points. The girl and the bald man mock the protagonist and say that this is irrelevant to him. They reveal that points can be exchanged for supplies and are managed by the leader. The system also shows each person's injury level, and the bald man's is at 20. The girl has 30 injury points, and the protagonist is at the maximum with 50. The girl provokes him, saying he has the lowest score and now depends on her. The young man wonders what he should trade his injury points for and gets an idea. A random option appears, allowing 2 minutes of contact with the real world. He asks if everything there is a reflection of the real world, and the bald man confirms it. The protagonist decides to make a deal and uses his points to buy the option. The girl thinks the reward is useless, and the bald man says no one from the outside can help. He then specifies that he wants to contact the parents of Mako Ida. The system starts connecting the call, and the other two watch with curiosity. When the call is answered, the hero introduces himself as Maiko's friend to gain their trust. He finds out that Maiko disappeared 10 years ago and asks to speak with her. The woman holds the lighter and remembers the promise she made to herself. In a memory, she remembers the fire she caused and all the victims. The young man says that because of the isolated location, no one survived the fire. He reveals that the village practiced human trafficking and bought students for little money. The hero then wonders if it was Mako who started the fire to get revenge. With a sad look, he explains that she also did not survive the fire she caused. He relays Mako's message, saying that she loved them and wanted to be their daughter again. In a photo, we see a happy Mako with her parents after an academic achievement. She was a brilliant scientist and worked in a lab with great talent. The woman then despairs upon realizing she was tricked and that her end has come. A countdown begins on the bus screen, announcing the next phase of the game. The protagonist wonders how long this will keep happening in the real world. The girl informs him that his points have been confiscated and he now has few points. With a clenched fist, he gets angry at the injustice and the system's lack of logic. He questions the other's lack of compassion, and the girl angrily scolds him. The young woman tells him to shut up, and the bald man intervenes to prevent a fight between them. She defends him, saying he used his intelligence to save them in the last phase. The bald man tells him to save their energy because the next phase is about to begin. The three of them get ready in the bus aisle for the new challenge that awaits them. With the public points, the leader buys the minimum amount of weapons and survival gear. The girl offers food to the young man and says she bought it with her private points. With a seductive smile, she calls him a serious student and teases him with a strawberry. The young man gets annoyed and asks if she has a problem with university students. The young woman becomes furious with his response and threatens to teach him a lesson again. Suddenly, the bus brakes sharply and the girl almost falls from the jolt. Through the window, they see they have arrived at a high school called Sika. The school sign shines in the sun, and the name Sika High School is clearly visible. The three disembark and observe the new setting with attention and curiosity. The bald man informs them that each has a bag with a weapon and some basic supplies. Seeing someone approaching, the leader tells everyone to get ready for whatever comes. A man in a suit approaches them and asks what they are doing out of class. The group is confused and doesn't understand the mysterious man's question. Furious, the man shouts and demands to know why they are not in the classroom. The three remain unresponsive, and the man approaches to scold them. He pulls the protagonist's ear and complains about his clothes and lack of a uniform. The bald man tries to intervene, but the man tells him to shut up and take the girl. The group then follows the man across the schoolyard toward the classroom. In the classroom, the trio is introduced to the class and stands in front of the other students. The girl warns the young man to be careful, because appearances can be deceiving. The bald man points to the empty seats and asks if they should sit there. The three sit in their seats and watch the other students with suspicion. They flip through the books and realize they are just normal high school textbooks. The girl sits at her desk and opens the book to see what's inside. To her surprise, the book is full of strange words written in red. The frightening characters seem to jump off the pages, terrifying her. With a pale face and breaking out in a cold sweat, she can't believe what she's seeing. The scene changes to the school at night under a starry sky and a crescent moon. The young man says the phase seems to be directed at her, and the girl begs for help. She tries to convince the hero not to use her as bait and offers to fight. With a serious and determined look, the girl prepares to face her destiny. The bald man advises her to survive on her own, and the girl becomes desperate. She denies having done anything wrong, but the young man says she needs to admit it. Desperate, she asks the leader for help, but he says survival is what matters. The girl grabs the bald man's shirt, pleading for help and understanding. The young man asks her to tell the truth so they can help her get out. He pressures her, asking why only her notebook had those words. Kneeling on the floor, she continues to deny it while the young man accuses her of her sins. With a face full of hatred, the girl screams that what happened was not her fault. The scene changes, and we see the girl walking alone across the schoolyard. She watches the other students and feels out of place and watched by everyone. The young woman thinks she isn't the target since everyone is at the same school. Suddenly, someone pulls her by the shoulder, startling her with the unexpected approach. A classmate invites her to a nightly gathering to tell ghost stories. Apparently, it's a weekly event that happens every Wednesday at the school. The other girls surround her and invite her to join them with snacks and juice. Night falls and the dormitory lights turn on, creating a gloomy atmosphere. In the room, the girls get ready for the night of horror stories. Lying on her bed, the girl watches the others and decides not to participate in the event. She says she isn't feeling well and prefers to go to sleep early to rest. One of the girls insists and asks her to listen to at least one story before sleeping. One of the girls begins to tell the story of a ghost that haunts the hallway. She reveals that the girl had knife wounds and came back as a vengeful ghost. One of the listeners gets scared and asks who is responsible for the bullying. The girl lying on the bed gets scared and realizes they are talking about her. With her eyes wide with terror, she relives the memories of that terrible day. In a memory, we see the girl huddled on the floor while others surround her. The aggressors mock her and humiliate her with mean and cruel comments. The group of girls intimidates her, leaving her scared with nowhere to run. The group's leader pulls her by the hair and demands that she humiliate herself to be forgiven. The victim refuses to do what she says, and the aggressor threatens her angrily. With a sadistic smile, the girl takes out a box cutter and asks what she is going to do. The sharp blade of the box cutter shines in the light, and fear takes over the victim. Terrified, the girl hurts herself with the blade, and the others are frightened by the scene. The group's leader watches them and asks what is going on with them. The other girls try to calm her down and say that she has scared the victim enough. Annoyed by her friend's cowardice, she sends them away and stays alone with the victim. The girls run off, and the victim takes advantage of the distraction to try to escape. With the box cutter in her hand, the aggressor stops her from fleeing and corners her again. The other girls run away in fear, leaving the two of them alone in the dark hallway. The victim runs desperately, but the aggressor chases her with the box cutter in hand. With a precise strike, the aggressor moves in to harm the victim with the box cutter. The girl tries to run away but is caught by the hair and thrown violently to the floor. The aggressor holds her down firmly and prepares to cut her with the sharp blade. The victim threatens to call the police, but the other says her father will protect her from everything. With a sadistic look, she blackmails her using her mother's illness as a weapon. Furious, the girl reacts and pushes the aggressor away to defend herself. The aggressor falls to the ground and the box cutter flies from her hand from the impact of the fall. In a quick move, she cuts herself with the box cutter and stages a scene. She then goes after the victim and accuses her of attacking her with the box cutter. A teacher appears and tries to separate the two as they fight in the hallway. The two accuse each other, and the teacher takes them to the principal's office. The principal's office sign indicates the place where injustice is about to happen. In the room, the victim denies having done anything wrong, but the teacher questions her. With a victorious smile, the aggressor watches the victim cry in despair. The girl's parents arrive, and the teacher treats them with indifference and contempt. The teacher punishes her and demands that she write a 20,000-word essay. Next, she calls the aggressor's father and treats him with great respect and kindness. The victim tries to explain herself, but the teacher ignores her and tells her to be quiet. With a look of disgust, the teacher insults the girl's parents for being deaf. The aggressor is then grabbed by the hair, and the final punishment is applied. The girl's father scolds her and says she is always causing trouble at school. He kicks her out of the dormitory and tells her to commute to school from home every day. The victim is punished and placed on probation for injuring a classmate. The teacher advises her not to complain because the other girl is the daughter of important people. With a clenched fist and eyes full of hatred, the victim feels wronged. In a car, the aggressor's father scolds her for the trouble at school. He is worried about the company's reputation, and the girl denies having bullied anyone. Her father humiliates her and says that his mistress's daughter is the only one with potential in the family. Angrily, he hits her and says he only doesn't expose her because of the company's reputation. In the car, the girl reflects on the hypocrisy of her father and society. She realizes she needs to protect the family's reputation at all costs. The school's clock tower marks the hours of a day that would change everything. The victim walks alone across the yard while the other students avoid her. In a dark hallway, she is attacked again and thrown violently to the floor. Fallen and weak, she is unable to react to the other girl's attacks. The aggressor approaches and asks what she is doing there alone. With a contemptuous smile, she says the fight isn't over yet. She threatens her and says no one will protect her now that everyone knows about the bullying. The victim threatens to report her, but the aggressor blackmails her with her power and influence. With the box cutter in hand, she threatens her and says her life will be miserable. With tears in her eyes, the victim holds the box cutter and prepares for the worst. The red liquid drips from the blade, and the girl makes a drastic decision. On a sunny day at school, life goes on as normal for the other students. In the classroom, the students prepare for another day of studies. A classmate asks why the girl is wearing long sleeves in the heat. He offers her some cold medicine, but she refuses and thanks him for his kindness. Suddenly, someone knocks on the classroom door, getting everyone's attention. The aggressor and her group appear at the door and call the victim to come out. The girl grips a pen tightly and prepares for what's to come. She gets up and goes to the door to meet the aggressors in the hallway. The victim moves away from the classroom and follows the girls to a more private place. In the classroom, the aggressor and the classmate watch the scene with different expressions. After a while, the girl still hasn't returned, and the classmate starts to worry. He looks at the empty desk and wonders where she could have gone. The victim returns to the classroom with a bruised face and messy hair. She sits at her desk and tries to hide her face with a book. The classmate approaches and asks if she got hurt by the other girls. She lies and says she got hurt by accident to avoid causing more trouble. Suddenly, the classmate's pen cap flies off and hits her head hard. Several pen caps start flying around the room, hitting the students. The girl says she caught a cold and went to get medicine from her classmates. The young man advises her to go to the nurse's office, and she says she'll go after class. The sun sets and the afternoon ends with a colorful sky and dark clouds. The victim walks alone through a dark alley with a sad expression on her face. With a bruised face and tired eyes, she continues on her hopeless path. Walking down the street, she is surprised by a young man who suddenly approaches her. The young man with a tiger tattoo grabs her and stops her from continuing on her way. She tries to break free and yells at him to stop following her, but he ignores her. With a hard slap, the girl frees herself from the aggressor and tells him to let her go. Furious, the young man harms her and throws her against the wall with great force. With a look of hatred, the aggressor prepares to go after the defenseless girl. Her classmate appears and punches the aggressor in the face to defend her. The bully threatens the boy, but he is not intimidated and bravely confronts him. The classmate helps her up and advises her to fight back whenever she is targeted. The aggressor appears and watches the scene with a look of contempt and indifference. She provokes the young man and says the victim traded him for another boyfriend. With a vengeful smile, she promises to get back at both of them with a school rule. The classmate tends to the girl's injuries and comforts her with his kindness. The aggressor reports the couple to the teacher and accuses the victim of having a boyfriend. The teacher laments the drop in the girl's grades and decides to expel the classmate. The teacher says there is photographic evidence and the victim despairs at the injustice. She runs out of the room, blaming herself for not being able to protect her classmate. In the schoolyard, students are talking and planning to skip gym class. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the school, and everyone runs to see what happened. The students are frightened by the scene and run terrified down the hallway. In the hallway, the victim is hanging by the neck lifeless with empty eyes. The aggressor and her friends come down the stairs, commenting on the incident. One of the girls spots the body and screams in fear, catching the other's attention. The aggressor turns around and is shocked to see the victim's body hanging. The girl's pale, lifeless face haunts her and leaves her speechless. Back in the present, the girl denies any fault and curls up in bed in fear. She blames everyone around her for the girl's passing and refuses to accept the truth. The victim's ghost appears in the room, startling her with its phantasmal presence. With a terrifying face, the ghost stares at her, leaving her paralyzed with fear. The girl screams in terror, and the ghost goes after her with its sharp claws. The ghost disappears, and the girl realizes it was all just a prank. The other girls laugh at her and reveal it was just a scary prank. They mock her fear and have fun with their classmates' exaggerated reaction. Furious, the girl tells them to leave and gives them the middle finger in anger. The next day, the aggressor watches the other girls with a look of contempt. The girl climbs onto a bunk bed while the others watch her with curiosity. From the windowsill, her classmates comment that she lost her mind over a prank. Suddenly, the girl throws herself from the building and falls toward the ground. Frightened, the girl runs down the hallway, wondering what is happening there. In the bathroom, she looks at herself in the mirror and tries to calm down to understand the situation. A shadow with red eyes appears in the reflection, terrifying her. She realizes the phase is about Nanis and prepares for the worst that is to come. The girl tries to convince herself that everything will be okay and plans to talk to the leader. A strange noise catches her attention, and she turns to see what it is. The victim's ghostly hand holds a box cutter, leaving her paralyzed with fear. The ghost goes after her and throws her to the ground with a supernatural and frightening force. She tries to crawl away, but the ghost chases her down the dark hallway. The sound of the ghost's footsteps echoes down the hallway, and fear takes over. The girl hides in a corner and tries to protect herself from the phantom's advance. Huddled on the floor, she hugs her knees and trembles with fear at the situation. She covers her head with her hands and waits in terror for the ghost to move. Suddenly, the girl is pulled by an invisible force and screams in despair. The girls from the prank appear and find her collapsed on the hallway floor. They surround her and watch her with curiosity, not understanding what is happening. With eyes wide with terror, she stares at something only she can see. The girls transform into monsters with red eyes and scary smiles. The girl faints from fear and falls to the floor with a pale and expressionless face. She wakes up in her bed and realizes it was all just a terrible nightmare. Looking at her hands, she sees several cuts and realizes the pain is real. In a memory, her father hits her and humiliates her because of her appearance. On the school's running track, students exercise under the morning sun. Her father questions her about the injuries on her face and accuses her of shaming the family. He decides she will return home and forbids her from continuing at the school. Annoyed with her disobedience, he grabs her by the neck and threatens her. In front of everyone, he drags her by the arm and takes her away from the school. The bald man and the protagonist walk across the yard in their school uniforms. With a determined look, the leader asks if the young man got the location. The two follow a maid and approach a luxurious mansion. The hero is impressed with the mansion, but the bald man reminds him it's an illusion. They follow the maid through the garden and prepare for what they will find. The girl bangs on a glass window and pleads for help with a bruised face. She punches the glass hard and screams desperately for someone to help her. Suddenly, a hand grabs her from behind and pulls her inside the mansion. With her eyes wide with terror, she stares at her aggressor with great fear. The two observe the scene and realize the setting was built around her. The young man wonders if the girl's father lived that way in the real world. The maid invites them in and asks them to wait for the owner of the house. The girl's father appears, and the protagonist introduces himself as her classmate. He compliments the bald man and says he is the most athletic student in their grade. With a suspicious look, the man accepts the tasks and sizes up the two young men. The imposing mansion stands out in the landscape with its luxurious architecture. The hero notices the man's contemptuous look and understands his desperation for a family. With a cold look, he says the man made his choices and deserves no pity. The two walk through the garden and plan the next stage of their mission. The bald man confirms that the target is inside and decides to act that night. The young man watches the window and prepares to receive orders from the leader. Night falls and the mansion lights up with the lights on in the rooms. The leader sneaks through the garden and prepares to enter the mansion. Lying on the grass, the young man complains and the bald man scolds him for his lack of commitment. The two approach the mansion and prepare for a silent entry. The bald man gives a whistle to the young man and instructs him to use it in case of trouble. The hero watches the leader and realizes he is an experienced professional. The bald man scales the wall with agility, and the young man watches the scene, impressed. The protagonist hears the voice of the girl's father and hides so as not to be seen. With a look of contempt, he walks away and tells the man to stay away from him. Hiding, the protagonist carefully watches the scene to understand what is happening. The girl's father throws her to the ground and scolds her for her rebellious behavior. With a bruised face, she stares at him with hatred and refuses to obey him. With a belt in his hand, he prepares to punish her for her disobedience. Furious, he accuses her of shaming the family name with her actions. He grabs her by the neck and says it would be better if she left with her father. The girl struggles to break free, but her father tightens his grip and chokes her. A vase falls to the floor and shatters into several pieces from the impact of the fall. The sister and stepmother appear and ask him to stop hurting the girl. The vase shatters into 1,000 pieces, and the noise echoes through the luxurious mansion. The sister runs to help her and asks if she is okay after the incident. The girl pushes her away and angrily yells at her to take her hands off her. The family worries about the sister, and the father gets the first aid kit. With a bruised face and eyes full of hatred, she watches the scene in silence. Her father scolds her for not thanking her sister for defending her from the attack. She feels like a failure and compares herself to her perfect sister, who is loved by everyone. The stepmother accuses her of being a problem ever since she arrived at that house. Kneeling on the floor, she reflects on her life and the damage caused by her father. The sister tells her mother that something terrible happened and asks for help. The stepmother comforts her and tells her not to worry about the other's problems. The protagonist understands the girl's obsession and the reason for her behavior. He hears a noise and turns to see what is happening in the room. The girl's father's body falls to the floor, and the girl laughs frighteningly. With eyes full of hatred, she celebrates her father's demise with a smile. The girl runs out of the mansion in a state of trance and euphoria. The young man tries to catch up to her and asks her to control herself, but she doesn't listen. He whistles to get the leader's attention and warn him about the situation. The bald man gets up, and the young man warns that the girl has completely lost control. The girl sinks into a swamp and struggles to stay on the surface. The leader says she has two choices: come back with them or face her fate there. Trapped in the swamp, the girl screams for help and begs to get out of that place. The protagonist is frightened by the scene and doesn't understand what is happening. The bald man yells that the ground is giving way and that they need to escape quickly. He explains that it's a non-Newtonian fluid and they need to move slowly. The young man remembers a university lecture and understands how to get out of there. The two lie down on the ground and crawl slowly to escape the quicksand. The bald man manages to reach a safe place and holds on so as not to sink. He yells for the young man to crawl slowly toward him to save himself. The girl is pulled into the swamp by ghostly hands and becomes desperate. Trapped in the swamp, she begs for help, but no one can save her now. The two watch the girl sink, and the bald man says it was a fitting end. A ghostly hand emerges from the swamp and says that now they will be together. The girl is swallowed by the swamp, and the ghostly hands pull her to the bottom. She sinks slowly into the swamp, and her face disappears into the dark mud. The two run to the bus before the dimension collapses on them. The bald man explains that the collapse began when the creature's wish was fulfilled. With a clenched fist, the young man runs as fast as he can to escape. The bus appears in the distance, and the two hurry to reach it in time. The ground turns into a swamp, and the young man accidentally steps in the mud. The bald man helps him out, and the two continue their desperate race. The young man apologizes for the mistake, and the bald man forcefully throws him away. With a leap, the leader pushes himself off and moves away from the expanding swamp. He says that selfishness is the only rule for survival in that dangerous place. The protagonist gets up and faces the bald man with a challenging look. He takes out a blade and prepares to face the leader in a final duel. With a quick strike, he goes after the bald man and throws him toward the swamp. The young man jumps over the swamp and reaches the bus safely on the other side. His hand is bleeding from the effort, but he managed to survive the challenge. The bald man is shocked to see him alive and can't believe his luck. With a relieved look, the young man says that luck was on his side this time. The bus door opens, and the two get on for the next stage of the journey. The young man comments that the last phase was easy, but the bald man says that what's important is to survive. The leader warns him that the value of resources will become clear after a few more phases. The protagonist looks at his arm and notices that the wound closed with a single application. He is impressed by the potency of the medicine and understands the value of the supplies. With a determined look, he decides to keep the bald man alive to unravel the mysteries. The leader reveals that the system fills empty spots to maintain a minimum number. The bus speeds up, and the tires spin rapidly on the dark and mysterious road. A new passenger gets on the bus, and the bald man identifies him as a newbie. The young man wonders when they return from the dimension, and if there's a chance to escape. He realizes it's a trap and that the game masters are smarter than they seem. With his arms crossed, he decides to keep gathering information to survive. 3 new passengers get on the bus, and the bald man approaches to greet them. He welcomes them to the bus from heck and asks them to say their names. The newbies are startled by the reception and think the bald man is crazy. They introduce themselves, and one of them complains about the long walk to the bus stop. The The bald man ignores them and tells them to sit in the back while watching them with disdain. One of the newbies refuses to travel with them and tries to get off the bus. The leader warns him not to do that, or he will trigger a penalty. Desperate, the man shouts for the driver and demands to be let out of there. With his eyes wide with terror, the newbie doesn't understand what is happening there. He looks at the driver's seat and realizes the bus is completely empty. Suddenly, a robotic voice announces that the departure has begun and everyone must be seated. The man loses his balance with the bus's sudden movement and almost falls to the floor. Immediately after, a blue electric current emerges from the floor and hits him squarely. Screaming in pain, the man feels the electricity course through his entire body nonstop. Lying on the floor, he begs for help as the currents continue to hit him. The protagonist then says the seats are insulated and that he should have sat down. The other two newbies feel relieved for having followed the bald man's orders. With great effort, the man drags himself to a seat and asks what that bus is. The other newbie also despairs and demands an explanation for the bizarre situation. The bald man then decides to explain the rules of the game they were forced into. Desperate, the man puts his hands on his head and can't believe what is happening. The leader lights a cigarette and reveals that everyone there is a condemned sinner. He explains that everyone there hides a dark past behind a normal appearance. With a clenched fist, the hero hears that every soul chosen for that journey is guilty. The newbies deny the accusations and say they are good people like doctors and philanthropists. The system announces that the next stop has arrived and everyone must get off the bus. From an aerial view, we see the bus stopped on a road surrounded by a dense forest. The protagonist gets off the bus and comments that the silence of that place is very strange. The group walks through a dense forest with enormous trees around them. The protagonist becomes worried because he doesn't know what kind of predators live there. They continue their walk through the forest as the sun illuminates the path. The blue sky and strong sun create a beautiful but also very suspicious scene. Suddenly, they hear a voice singing, and the hero finds it all very strange. The bald man warns everyone to treat it like a game and always stay alert. Suddenly, dense fog appears and the newbies despair at the situation. The group's leader then takes out a rope so that no one gets lost in the fog. The men tie themselves to the rope so as not to get separated in the middle of the fog. The bald man leads the tied-up group as they advance through the foggy forest. Unable to see clearly, one of the newbies ends up tripping on a rock in the path. He screams in pain as he feels his leg get injured from the unexpected fall. Lying on the ground, he realizes he has a deep cut on his leg and shouts for help. The hero then takes out some medicine, and the injured man asks what kind of thing it is. The young man reveals that in this world, there are miraculous remedies as he treats the wound. To everyone's surprise, the wound closes instantly, and the others can't believe it. With the man healed, the group resumes walking along the trail in the mysterious forest. Impatient, the leader yells for the man to hurry up and keep walking with the group. After a while, they take a break to eat and regain their energy. The newbies then start to complain about being tired and wonder how far they have to go. Suddenly, one of the men screams and is pulled backward with great force by something invisible. With wide eyes, he sees a branch-like hand holding him and dragging him across the ground. Lying on the ground, he points behind him and screams in terror that he saw a ghost in the forest. The other newbie scolds him and says that ghosts don't appear during the day. He then points to a tree and says he recognizes that place because they've been there before. The protagonist then realizes they have been walking in circles the whole time without getting anywhere. The bald man says the situation is worrying and that they need to clear a trail to guide themselves. Without a second thought, the leader grabs one of the newbies' jackets to use as a marker. The man complains and says his jacket is very expensive and that the bald man has completely lost it. The big guy then knocks him down and asks if his life is worth less than a simple jacket. With the fabric in his hand, he says he will use their clothes as trail markers. The hero comments that the man values his clothes more than his own survival. The young man then ties a piece of cloth to a branch to mark the first trail. The other man does the same and ties another piece of fabric to a nearby tree. After a while, the newbies complain about the fatigue and the suffocating humidity of the forest. The bald man rummages through his backpack while the protagonist watches him with attention and curiosity. The leader warns that if they stop walking, they will surely perish right there. With determination, the group continues their walk through the forest, following the bald man's orders. Suddenly, they spot a mysterious village in the distance and hear soft music in the air. Following the sound of the melody, the group walks toward the village in search of shelter and answers. The newbies are enchanted by the melody and the beauty of the mysterious village in the middle of the forest. Getting closer, they see a woman in a red dress waiting for them at the entrance. The young woman introduces herself as Haruka and says they can be safe there in that place. The protagonist and the bald man, however, are suspicious of the woman's friendly reception. The newbies, on the other hand, are relieved and ask for food while complimenting the woman's beauty. The three men then follow the woman, who now appears to have her hands tied. The hero observes the scene and thinks that the newbies let their guard down too easily. He thinks that if they can join the residents, they can use the situation to their advantage. The bald man agrees, and the two decide to follow the group but always remain on alert. The group then walks through the stone streets of the village, following the mysterious woman. Soon they are welcomed with a feast full of delicious food and drinks. The hero and the leader sit together but remain suspicious and don't eat anything. Meanwhile, the other three men eat heartily without a care in the world. The woman asks why they aren't eating, and the bald man says that fatigue has taken away his appetite. The young woman then says she has prepared a place for them to rest, and another woman appears. The leader gets up to follow the guide, and the protagonist goes with him without hesitation. The young man questions if it's right to leave the newbies there, and the bald man says it's their choice. The young man agrees with the leader and accepts the decision to leave the others behind. Meanwhile, one of the newbies is captivated by the dance of the woman in red. The other scolds him for drooling over a girl, while the young woman smirks. The argument heats up, and the two men start cursing at each other in the middle of the street. Impatiently, the man in the suit lands a strong punch on the other young man's face. The third man tries to break up the fight, but the two continue to hit each other nonstop. In the background, the woman in red watches the scene with a wicked smile on her face. She then explains that the winner of the fight will be with her, according to the laws of her tribe. Angrily, the man in the suit shouts that Haruka will be his and goes after his rival. The chubby guy holds him back, and he says that if the young woman becomes his wife, he can stay there forever. Even so, the other manages to break free and lands another punch on his opponent's face. The man falls to the ground from the impact of the blow, and the other prepares for the final attack. Without hesitation, the man picks up a wooden plate from the ground to use as a weapon. With a furious look, he raises the plate and prepares to strike his fallen rival. The blow lands squarely on the other man's head, and he falls unconscious to the ground. From the impact, the man is badly injured, and a red liquid flows from his head. Desperate, his friend runs to help him while the winner watches the scene. The young woman then approaches and cleans the winner's face with a delicate handkerchief. She declares him her husband and leads him away arm in arm with a smile on her face. The friend begs the injured man not to go as the couple slowly walks away. Later, the man wakes up in a bed with his head bandaged and still dazed. The bald man then warns him that all the women in that world want to see him gone. Annoyed, the man defends Haruka and the group leader calls him a complete idiot. His friend tries to calm him down, and the protagonist asks him to be patient with the young man. The bald man wonders if the other man followed the woman and decides to go look for him. He comments that it would be easier if the woman had just finished him off at once. The two then go out into the village to look for the missing man. With a determined look, the hero follows the group leader without question. On the way, they see some women cleaning the floor with cloths and blindfolds. The young man asks if they have seen his friend, but the women don't seem to hear. One of them then says she hasn't seen anyone and wasn't paying attention. The bald man gets annoyed with the disappearance and calls the man a lovesick fool. Night falls and the village is illuminated only by the light of the moon and stars. The group continues the search for the missing man in the dark streets of the village. The protagonist runs through the village in search of clues to the newbie's whereabouts. The other two join him, and they split up to search in different places. The leader climbs onto a roof to get a better view of the area and look for clues. Unsuccessful, the group reunites and wonders where the man could have gone. Tired, the two men suggest giving up the search, and the bald man calls them idiots. The protagonist explains that the bus won't leave until all the survivors have gathered. The leader is impressed with the young man's intelligence and realizes he's not so dumb. The hero says they need to change their approach, and the bald man asks what he means. With a serious look, he decides to go back and ask the residents where the woman is. The man with the bandage jokes that his friend hurt him over a monster woman, while the other says luck is on his side. The protagonist approaches the two and asks for help since they seem so happy. The two refuse to help and shout that they won't do what the young man is asking. Seeing the men's refusal, the protagonist looks at the leader, who just grumbles at the situation. With a clenched fist, the man with glasses glares at the group with a look full of anger and contempt. Impatiently, the bald man grabs the man by the collar while his friend yells for him not to touch him. Pressured by the big guy, the man with glasses finally gives in and agrees to help the group. The leader then throws him to the ground forcefully and yells at him to start moving immediately. His friend runs to help him up while the protagonist and the bald man watch the scene. Night falls over the village, and a mysterious fog begins to cover the wooden houses. With trembling fingers, the man knocks on the wooden door to get the woman's attention. Holding a flower, he calls for Haruka and asks her to open the door so he can come in. He then peeks through the crack in the door while the others watch the plan from a distance. Inside, he sees the woman kneeling on the floor with a serious expression on her face. With a lovesick look, the man is mesmerized by the young woman's beauty and enters the room. The woman then looks up and asks what's wrong with him this time. With a smile on his face, he offers the flower to the young woman as an apology gift. She takes the flower and compliments its beauty with a charming smile and a surprised look. Suddenly, she crushes the flower, and the man asks what she is doing with the gift. With a subtle smile, the flower in her hand begins to glow with an intense red light. The young woman puts the flower in her hair and says it's beautiful while the man watches her lovingly. She then pulls him by the hand into the room with a seductive smile on her face. With eyes shining with passion, the man feels like he's on cloud nine with the young woman's attention. Outside, the leader realizes that the young man has forgotten the mission and fallen for the woman. She says she loves him, and the man celebrates that she chose him instead of the other. Suddenly, her face transforms, and she says she loves him so much she could devour him. The creature approaches the man with its frightening mouth and sharp teeth. Without warning, the monster lunges at him and bites his shoulder with great force. The man is thrown to the floor and screams in pain, not understanding what is happening. With a mouth full of red liquid, the creature stares at him with a hungry look. The monster advances toward him, and the man screams desperately for it to stay away. A shadow with spikes appears out of nowhere and goes after the man lying on the room's floor. His friend wants to help, but the leader stops him, saying the plan will be ruined. Suddenly, the other missing man is thrown out of the house with great force. Immediately after, a giant blue shadow strikes the ground with a powerful blow. Lying on the ground, the protagonist wipes the substance from his face with a determined look. His eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares to fight. The shadow envelops the injured man and pulls him into its dark body. The protagonist then shouts to the others and runs toward the monster to strike. Running through the village, the young man suddenly looks up at the sky with a surprised expression. Suddenly, he sees a crowd of residents with torches approaching the group. The bald man holds the hero as the blindfolded residents slowly approach. Seen from above, the group is completely surrounded by the crowd of residents with torches. The friend despairs and wonders what those approaching people are. The hero then shouts that they are not human but monsters that want to eliminate them. The leader hands a bag to his friend and asks if he can use a firearm. The protagonist says the leader taught him once and that he can handle it. The bald man then takes a pack of dynamite from the bag for the young man to use against the horde. With the fuse lit, the dynamite is ready to be thrown at the monstrous residents. The explosive is launched into the middle of the crowd, which watches the object flying toward them. A giant explosion occurs, throwing all the residents far away with the strong impact. The friend says he can't do it, and the bald man shouts at him to do it if he doesn't want to be gone. Kneeling on the ground, the man feels nauseous and drops the dynamite beside him on the ground. Suddenly, he sees several worms on the ground and screams in despair at the disgusting scene. The leader then reveals that was their lunch, and the hero covers his mouth in disgust. In a memory, we see the feast the woman offered with various appetizing foods. The food then transforms into a disgusting feast full of worms and larvae. At another moment, the woman serves a drink in a glass with a gentle smile on her face. The drink then becomes a dark and disgusting liquid, revealing its true nature. The friend starts to choke and puts his hands on his neck, unable to breathe properly. Furious, the bald man grabs the man by the collar and shouts at him not to get in the group's way. The protagonist then starts firing at the crowd of monsters to clear a path. The newbie finally throws the dynamite, and a giant explosion occurs in the middle of the horde. Amidst the monsters' bodies, the man asks if they have finally managed to win. Suddenly, one of the bodies on the ground begins to twitch in a bizarre and frightening way. The creature then stands up and lets out a terrifying scream at the group of survivors. The newbie points in terror and shouts that the monsters are moving again and are immortal. Then, the entire horde of fallen creatures begins to rise to attack again. The protagonist and the bald man then fire nonstop at the approaching monsters. With their fingers on the triggers, they continue to fire but hear a strange noise. The leader realizes the ammunition is out, and the newbie panics at the situation. Without a second thought, the big guy grabs the other man by the shirt with great force. He then throws him toward the monsters, saying that trash serves as good bait. The man is quickly surrounded by the monsters, who grab him with their sharp claws. The bald man flees and shouts for the hero not to stand still, or he'll become monster food too. With a cold look, the protagonist just watches and thinks that everyone there is a criminal. He remembers that he feels no pity for anyone, because even the harmless can be bad people. Now in the forest, the protagonist and the bald man run to escape the village of monsters. With a focused look, the group leader continues to run without looking back. Stopping to rest, he says they can't use light so as not to attract the creature's attention. Kneeling on the ground, the bald man takes a remedy from his backpack and says he'll use it first. The protagonist looks at his hand and wonders why a scratch hurts so much. He then realizes that the leader has the same injury and is using all the medicine. Seeing the situation, the hero approaches to take the medicine bottle from his hand. With a serious look, the young man had already expected a selfish attitude from the bald man. He pours the liquid into his hand but realizes the amount is not enough. The bald man asks how he is, and the young man thanks him, saying it's just a scratch. The leader comments that the young man has gotten stronger, and the young man says it was just luck. The hero warns him that if the poison spreads, he will be the next to be affected. The young man then tells him to make sure he remains useful, and the bald man agrees. Almost morning, the bald man gets annoyed for not having found the other group yet. Worried, the hero thinks that the food has run out and that the leader might go after him soon. With a blade in his hand, the young man prepares to defend himself if he is targeted. Suddenly, something pulls them both down and they despair at the situation. In a dark and damp cave, we see some vines and a worm on the ground. The two roll down the cave slope and fall hard on the stone floor. Lying on the ground, the hero realizes his arm was dislocated by the impact of the fall. Without hesitation, he puts his arm back in place with a quick and precise movement. With a pained smile, the protagonist comments that the pain is actually quite lovely. He then picks up the blade that fell on the floor. He then reveals that his adrenaline is through the roof, and that the pain makes him stronger. With a blade in his hand, he faces the leader and asks if he thinks he can take him down. Suddenly, a purple energy appears in the cave and strikes the protagonist without warning. A white monster with a blindfold rushes to strike the young man with great fury. His eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares for battle. With a quick and precise blow, he cuts the creature in half with his sharp blade. The monster falls to the ground in 2 parts, and the hero watches the scene very carefully. From inside the creature, several purple tentacles begin to emerge and writhe. To his surprise, the creature regenerates and stands up again, ready to strike. The young man realizes that if he can't win, he will have to flee that place quickly. At that moment, the bald man grabs his leg, preventing him from escaping the fight against the monster. Desperate, the leader begs the young man not to abandon him there with that creature. With an ironic smile, the hero asks if they aren't going to abandon the leader there. The young man then grabs the bald man and drags him away from the horde of creatures. The leader is shocked by the young man's strength and can't believe he saved him. The two run through the cave as the shadowy creatures pursue them relentlessly. Along the way, they encounter several white rats with red eyes watching the scene. The bald man ends up tripping on a rock and falls to the ground, unable to get up. The hero throws him toward the monsters and says he is the perfect bait for the escape. In the background, he hears a scream and recognizes the voice of the other newbie who had disappeared. The two look down into the cave and the protagonist asks if the voice came from there. Down below, they find the other 2 men lying near a giant and mysterious egg. The man with glasses panics, but the hero tells him to be quiet so as not to attract monsters. Desperate, the man continues to scream, and the protagonist repeats for him to shut up. Angrily, the young man thinks about the bus rule and regrets having to save those idiots. The leader accuses him of testing the supplies, but the young man says they will use the rope to save them. As they prepare for the rescue, the bald man notices that the young man has changed completely. The hero then throws the rope to the man and tells him to tie it around his waist to climb up. The man with glasses starts to climb and kicks the other, who begs not to be abandoned there. Mercilessly, he steps on his companion's hand and tells him to save himself as there is no more hope. The hero asks if there is anyone else, and the man with glasses lies, saying he is alone. Suddenly, one of the white creatures appears from behind and prepares to strike him. The monster then goes after him with its claws, and the man screams in pain from the surprise blow. The creature throws the man into the air, and the protagonist is startled by the unexpected scene. The young man tries to pull him, but the monster holds him tightly while he pleads for his life. With great effort, the young man continues to pull the rope to try to save the man from the monster. Hanging by the rope, the man with glasses despairs and screams for help and fear. With a determined look, the hero decides to use all his strength to rescue the man. Suddenly, the giant egg breaks, and a creature resembling a white phoenix appears. To everyone's surprise, the woman in red from the village appears with a smile on her face. The monsters from the village then reveal their true forms with frightening smiles. The phoenix-like creature lets out a deafening screech that echoes throughout the cave. The man with glasses recognizes the screech and says it's the same one he heard in the forest before. Without wasting time, the protagonist ties the rope to a rock to prepare for the rescue. Suddenly, several other phoenixes appear, and the young man yells for the other to climb up alone. Terrified, the man climbs the rope while the bald man warns that they have no more ammunition. The leader and the hero then jump down to fight the creatures using only their blades. The bald man is quickly surrounded by the birds and shouts for help as he is relentlessly attacked. With a blade in his hand, the protagonist faces one of the creatures, preparing for combat. He then dodges an attack with a quick and acrobatic move to avoid being hit. In the middle of the dodge, he ends up slipping and grabs onto the leg of the man on the rope. The man with glasses shouts for the young man not to drag him down with him in the fall. The hero calls him ungrateful, but the man says it's natural to save oneself first in such a situation. With no other option, the young man uses his blade to start climbing the cave wall by himself. With great skill, he continues to climb the wall while the other climbs the rope. The man blames him for the monsters, and the hero impatiently tells him to shut up. Suddenly, the creatures ignore the two and start flying toward the back of the cave. Down below, the woman in red is surrounded by flames, and the birds fly toward her. From the fire, several other women emerge who seem to be part of some kind of ritual. Lying on the ground, the man who is left behind begs the woman to save him from that place. With a look of disgust, the woman stares at the man lying on the ground without saying anything. She then lifts her foot and prepares to step on the man's head with great force. Without hesitation, the young woman steps on his chest, and the man screams in pain from the heavy impact. The man asks why she is doing that, but the woman stares at him in silence. With a cold expression, the young woman reveals that she is doing all of this for pure revenge. The man is shocked by the revelation and wonders what kind of revenge it is. In a memory, we see the reflection of the woman with wings in the eyes of a giant creature. We then see the white birds in a peaceful green field near a crystal clear river. The creatures lived in peace in the forest, spending their days flying and drinking water. Suddenly, a group of people appears and starts observing the birds with binoculars. A professor explains that those are rare and protected birds known as mourning birds. One of the students confirms that the book's description matches the appearance of the rare birds. The professor reveals that there are only 130 of them left, and that this is their only habitat. In the distance, another couple observes the birds with binoculars and is enchanted by their beauty. The woman is impressed with the birds and asks her friend to be quiet so as not to scare them. Suddenly, a heavy machine scares the birds, which fly away from the noise. The group is startled and wonders what a machine like that is doing in a protected area. They then see several men cutting down the forest trees with chainsaws and tractors. One of the trees is felled and falls to the ground with a deafening and frightening noise. Mercilessly, the men begin to go after the defenseless birds with their chainsaws. Furious, the professor and his students shout that it is a protected area with endangered animals. One of the workers says they are just following orders, and the professor wonders whose orders they are. The man reveals that the boss is a wealthy businessman, and the old man decides to call him right away. Calling the Ecological Protection Society, he reports the situation at the bird sanctuary. Suddenly, the professor is shocked by the response he receives from the other end of the line. Apparently, it was all a secret deal, and that was the last place for those birds. Hopeless, the professor hears that there is nothing to be done and shouts that it is illegal. With trembling hands, the old man holds the phone, unable to believe the corruption he has discovered. His students despair, and the professor decides to document everything to report it to the authorities. One of the female students then takes out her phone and starts recording the entire destruction of the forest. Seeing the recording, one of the workers slaps the girl's hand, knocking the phone down. To defend her, one of the male students goes after the man and punches him in the face. A fight breaks out, and the workers assault the group of students with great force. Sitting on a log, the group is all bruised, and a man says they went easy on them. In a photo, we see the defeated group with their faces full of injuries and sadness. In the distance, the other couple observes the scene and decides to just post the video online. In an office, the worker's boss argues with them for letting photos be taken. The man tries to apologize, but the boss scolds him and says it was all his fault. With his head down, the worker begs for one more chance to fix the mistake. The boss then smiles and says that if something goes wrong, he will have the chance to take the blame. The boss blames the worker for the situation and tells him to take responsibility. Desperate, the man says he doesn't want to go to jail, and the boss asks how much he needs. The businessman then promises to take care of his children, leaving the worker very surprised. With a determined look, the man seems to accept the proposal to protect his family. Two police officers take him away, and he takes full blame for the crime he committed. From the top of a building, the boss watches this scene with a cold and remorseless look. In prison, the worker says the damage to the sanctuary has nothing to do with his boss. In a hospital, the professor watches the news on TV with his students around him. Furious, the old man points to the TV and accuses him of lying because the orders were from the boss. The reporter then announces that because of the destruction, the rare bird has become extinct forever. Devastated by the news, the professor screams in pain and rips off his oxygen mask. His hand falls lifelessly, and the heart monitor shows that his heartbeat has stopped completely. His students cry and wonder why good people are gone while villains live on. In the office, the boss finds out that the students are still seeking legal action. With a dark look and without hesitation, the businessman orders his subordinate to silence them. Back at the site, we see tractors destroying the forest and animals fleeing from there. Two workers wonder why the construction is continuing if the foreman has been arrested. Suddenly, one of them points to something and tells the other to look over there in fear. The two then run off terrified and shout that they saw a body on the ground. From the construction ground, several ghostly hands begin to emerge slowly. On the laptop screen, a reporter announces that the student's case has finally been resolved. Next, the boss's subordinate appears in handcuffs, confessing to the crime he did not commit. Meanwhile, in his office, the real culprit watches everything with great calm. With a satisfied smile, the businessman seems happy with the result of his evil plan. He then holds a paper that talks about his new and gigantic nature theme park. On the sheet, we see a photo of him with the title of New Era Businessman in the country's largest park. The man then reflects that with money comes power, and with power comes even more money. With open arms and surrounded by bills, the businessman feels invincible with his wealth. For him, the sacrifices don't matter as long as he gets what he wants in the end. Back in the present, the boss is lying on the ground with the woman's foot on his chest. The young woman asks if he remembers what he did, and the man begs not to meet his end there. Angrily, she says that her friends didn't want that either, but he didn't care. In a memory, we see the bodies of the birds scattered on the floor of the destroyed forest. The last surviving bird flies away as a weapon's barrel points in its direction. The man says that when the construction is finished, the place will become a completely legal hunting ground. Without hesitation, the businessman prepares to fire at the last bird with a smile on his face. The bird's feathers float in the air as the word, revenge, appears in the middle of the screen. The woman then tells her friends to come because the day of revenge has finally arrived. With a frightening smile and black eyes, she reveals her true monster form. The birds then surround him, and the man screams desperately for them to stop the attack. A dark energy hits the businessman's chest as the spirit assails him without mercy. Hanging from the rope, the man with glasses thinks the monster only wants the boss and he will be saved. The hero then questions him and says you can't talk to a monster like that. Suddenly, the protagonist slips on the cave wall and almost falls from the scare. The man agrees that you can't negotiate with the creature and decides to climb faster. With a smile, he offers to help the young man if he makes him the new group leader. Ignoring the proposal, the man with glasses continues to climb the rope confidently. Suddenly, the protagonist surpasses him, climbing the wall with incredible speed. Reaching the top, the hero looks down and sees the other man still climbing slowly. As he prepares to climb, his fingers slip, and he loses his balance on the edge. Unable to hold on, the protagonist ends up falling back to the bottom of the cave. The group leader is shocked to see him and wonders where he got so much strength to climb. With a serious look, the hero holds a bottle of medicine that he took from the bald man. Furious, the big guy accuses him of stealing the medicine while he was distracted. He then tries to take the bottle back, but the young man says he used his own points for it. The hero says that underestimating an ally is more dangerous than underestimating an enemy. He then reveals that they were both poisoned, but the bald man used almost all the antidote. The leader is shocked to discover that the young man took the antidote and calls him a fool. A system screen then appears and shows that the hero has 50 injury points. He then looks at the screen, which shows a blue vortex spinning in a mysterious menu. The hero reveals that he used 10 points on something that wasn't for communicating with the outside world. With the other 40, he bought medicine and a weapon, intentionally injuring himself. The bald man is shocked to find out that the newbie had 50 private points and so much power. Breaking out in a cold sweat, the group leader can't believe he was tricked like that by the young man. The protagonist then grabs him by the shirt and says he will show him what it's like to be the prey. With incredible strength, the young man lifts the big guy, who is amazed by so much power. With glowing eyes, he holds the bald man's fist and effortlessly stops him from attacking. Using a judo throw, the young man throws the leader to the ground with great ease and precision. Lying on the ground, the bald man realizes that the young man was hiding his strength the whole time. With a cold look, the hero says that now he will know what it's like to be hunted, and the man panics. The protagonist then begins to drag the leader across the floor as he screams in despair. Meanwhile, the man with glasses finally manages to reach the top of the cave, tired. Suddenly, he turns around, startled by a strange noise coming from behind him. A horde of white birds then flies toward him, ready to strike without mercy. Huddled on the ground, he screams that he wasn't the one who finished them off and despairs at the attack. The creatures begin to go after him while the hero drags the bald man in the background. Seeing the situation, the group leader breaks free and runs toward the birds to sacrifice himself. The creatures then surround him, and the man prepares for the worst with a look of terror. Suddenly, the protagonist punches the air and throws all the birds far away with the blow. The man with glasses looks up, shocked by the scene, and sees the creatures flying away. Being assailed by the birds, the bald man begs not to be left behind. Mercilessly, the creatures rip off the man's arm, and he screams in pain from the attack. The scene then changes to 3 years earlier, with a man lying on the floor of a room. The bald man threatens him with a blade, saying he will take his fingers for interfering with his business. Even though he's injured, the man on the floor calls them smugglers and tells them to leave. With a furious look, the big guy raises the blade and prepares to strike the fallen man. He then strikes the man with the blade without a second's hesitation. Back in the present, we see the bald man's body lying on the ground, all injured. The woman then says that 2 are already gone, and tells the birds to hunt those who fled. With wings of fire, she screams that none of them will be able to escape her revenge. In a forest, the hero and the man with glasses run while the other asks him to wait. The man with glasses continues to run after the protagonist, trying to catch him. He then says that the young man is the new leader, but the hero tells him to be quiet. With a serious look, the protagonist seems to feel that something bad is about to happen. The two then stop in a clearing, and the hero looks up at the sky attentively. Suddenly, a flock of black birds appears in the sky and flies toward the two young men. The ghost woman appears and orders the birds to finish off all the humans there. She then reveals that human flesh is perfect for her species to thrive. Terrified by the scene, the man with glasses starts running desperately through the forest. The white birds surround him, and he shouts for help, calling for the new group leader. With sharp claws and a wicked smile, the monster woman tells the hero to be gone. Intimidated, the protagonist takes out his blade and prepares for combat. Without a second thought, the young man leaps toward the creature to strike it with his blade. With a quick movement, the creature dodges the blow, and the young man backs away. Even while dodging, the young man ends up being hit in the shoulder by the creature's claws. The woman realizes she was also injured and compliments him, saying he is just a human. With a battle cry, the creature advances and says that this new world is hers to conquer. Grabbing his face, she says that humans have only 2 choices in that place. To the creature, humanity is the race that most deserves to be completely extinguished. Her claws approach the young man's neck, and she promises that everyone there will be gone. Suddenly, some white feathers begin to fall from the sky slowly and mysteriously. Lying on the ground, the hero reveals a weapon and fires at the creature that was mercilessly attacking him. Shocked by the attack, the woman looks at the wound in her chest in disbelief. With a victorious smile, the young man says his only worry was not having firepower. With his finger on the trigger, the young man reveals that he had been prepared for this for a long time. He fires again and reveals that he used his points to buy a weapon and it was worth it. Without wasting time, the protagonist throws a pack of dynamite toward the other birds. A giant explosion occurs, and the 2 men run to escape the strong impact. The man with glasses asks where they are going, and the hero shouts that it's to the bus stop. Leaving a trail of destruction, the two run as the birds' bodies fall to the ground. Surrounded by flames and shadows, the woman says that humans are defenseless against them. With great anger, she shouts that she will not let the two escape from that place no matter what. The man with glasses despairs and shouts that the creatures are coming after them to attack. The hero tells him to run, but the other wonders how to escape from such a strong monster. The protagonist assures him that they will be safe as soon as they reach the bus. The black birds continue the pursuit and fly toward the two young men relentlessly. Suddenly the bus appears in front of them, and the hope of escape finally increases. A giant shadow strikes the protagonist, who prepares to defend himself from the blow. With a quick blow, the young man repels the shadow's attack and throws it far away with force. The creature then shouts that all of humanity will be annihilated by its species. With a determined look, the hero faces the creature and prepares for the final confrontation. The creature tells the young man to be gone as black tentacles emerge from its hands. The protagonist manages to dodge the blow, and the woman falls to the ground from the impact. The young man then takes out a sword and prepares for the final blow against the fallen creature. With the sword in hand, the young man leaps and strikes the creature with a precise and quick blow. The blow hits squarely, and the creature's body is split into two parts instantly. Even lying on the ground, the creature's head says that he can't finish it off. With a cold look, the protagonist questions the creature's statement with the sword in hand. Terrified, the creature screams no as the blade approaches its head. Without hesitation, the hero finishes off the creature with a precise blow to its head. Meanwhile, the man with glasses is relentlessly attacked by the white birds and screams in pain. The creatures then disperse, and several white feathers float slowly in the air. The man with glasses gets up and sees the hero with his back to him, sword in hand. He then asks if the young man defeated the creature and where that sword came from. The protagonist reveals that he traded for it in the system, and the man doesn't believe it. The man with glasses then asks the new leader to explain the rules of that strange world. The hero gets on the bus, and the other gets annoyed with his tone of voice and asks who he thinks he is. Suddenly, the creature's head falls from the sky, and the man with glasses is terrified by the scene. The system announces that the bus is departing, and the protagonist sits in his seat. The man gets on the bus but wonders why the vehicle is leaving without his father. Through the window, he shouts for the bus to wait as the vehicle accelerates and drives away. The hero explains that the bus leaves as soon as all the survivors have boarded the vehicle. The man then asks if his father is gone, and the protagonist confirms the sad news. Lying on the floor, the man laments and wonders why that happened to them. The hero then thinks that everyone there is a criminal, and that none of them are innocent. With a serious look, the protagonist reveals that he is no exception to the rule either. Suddenly, a black shadow begins to rise from the bus floor and envelopes the fallen man. The young man is startled by the scene and wonders what is happening inside the bus. The shadow transforms into a frightening creature, and the man shouts that it's a penalty. Being assailed by the creature, the man begins to cough and choke on the black smoke. The smoke creature then throws the man into the air with great force. The hero then explains that this is a punishment for not following the system's instructions. Desperate, he shouts that he is a doctor and saves lives and that this is all ridiculous. Suddenly, a holographic screen appears in front of the two survivors on the bus. The screen shows that there are only two survivors left and their scores of 15 and 80. The man complains about his score, and the hero says he did nothing but flirt and beg. He then offers his points to the young man in exchange for support to become the new leader. The protagonist refuses the offer and says he doesn't want his points or to be the group leader. The man worries and thinks that if he doesn't give the points to him, things won't be equal. The screen shows the damage points, and the hero realizes that with the poison and injuries, he has more than 100. Accessing his private space, the hero thinks about securing enough food, medicine, and weapons. The other man, however, sees that his options are only vegetables and baseball equipment. The supplies then appear in a backpack that works like a pocket dimension. Suddenly, the bus stops, and the man celebrates, thinking they have escaped that world. The hero thinks that he's had the same idea before and that he can use this man as an experiment. He then wonders why the former leader never got off at a normal bus stop. In the dark bus, the man runs to the door to try to escape while the hero watches. Suddenly, a shadowy hand grabs his shoulder, and the man turns around, terrified by the sight.